Miami couldn't keep pace with Indiana on Thursday, but the real story is Jimmy Butler's postgame interview and a subsequent report from ESPN that Jimmy has formally requested a trade. The Heat have a problem in their hands, but are they willing to fix it? We'll break that down in today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg, editor at allyoucanheat.com, here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. David, fair to say we have a big show for our audience today. We are recording this after the Heat's loss to the Pacers, but nobody cares about that because the story is Jimmy Butler's extremely candid and revealing press conference where he claimed that he was unhappy, suggested he might want to play elsewhere, took repeated shots at the coaching staff and how he's being used, and when asked if he could find joy in Miami, Butler said, quote, "Probably not," end quote. We've posted the full press conference on our YouTube page, but here's the part where he basically issues what amounts to a trade request.
I want to get my joy back. I'm happy here, off the court. But I want to be back to somewhere dominant. I want to hoop. And I want to help this team win. Right now, I'm not doing that.
Can you get your joy back here on the court?
Probably not.
So first, credit to Tim Reynolds for the question. I was in the media room when that happened, and you could hear a pin drop. I'm sure if you were just watching it and hearing it for the first time, you're just like, wow. That's as close to a trade request as it gets, but we don't even have to get close. We could just get the trade request because ESPN, minutes after all of this, reports with Shams Charania and Brian Windhorst that Jimmy Butler has told the Heat that he wants to be traded. So, David, your reaction, how did we get here?
It's not a great subject. And I feel like we're kind of addressing it somewhat glibly because it's just happened. And so this is kind of a whirlwind of breaking down the news. By the time everybody hears this episode Friday morning, maybe they'll have had time to digest it, and maybe it will be a very different reaction from a large swath of our listenership. But right now, I mean, we went from getting pasted by the Pacers to hearing from Jimmy Butler and obviously unhappy here in South Florida to a full-out confirmation that he has requested a trade from the front office, all within a span of a very short amount of time.
My head hurts.
And so, yeah, it's kind of hard to digest. It's kind of hard to kind of just take it all in. And there's no sense of how things have so quickly degraded. You know, this is all just fallen apart from hearing him kind of joke with media and kind of playfully say, well, I'm going to, play. I'm going to do this. I'm going to complete. I'm going to play hard. And then having him in back-to-back games clearly not play hard, and yet bristle at the suggestion, perhaps from Eric Spoelstra or maybe some other team official, according to the report from ESPN, that he wasn't playing hard, even though
on Wednesday
anybody watching the game,
on
Wednesday against the Pelicans, although anybody watching the game could say, well, that's not the Jimmy that we've expected or that we've seen on so many different occasions rise to the challenge. So,
well, can I jump in there? I'm sorry, because that's such a great point that you bring up, and we should clear. So, like I said, the full press conference is out there. I tweeted at WC Goldberg on Twitter. I did the whole transcription, so you could just read it there if you want to see it too. So this is straight from Jimmy Butler's mouth, and he went out of his way to say, nobody's going to tell me, nobody can claim I'm not playing hard. I'm playing hard. If my numbers are down, if my usage is down, it's because, or if my numbers are down, it's because my usage and my shots are down. And he, like I said, took repeated attacks at the coaching staff, essentially Eric Spoelstra, because he has issue with the way he's being used, essentially as a point guard, running the offense, a facilitator. And he claimed a couple times that his shots were down. It's hard to decipher whether or not his shots are down because he was told his shots were going to be down. He was going to be more of a facilitator, or if his shots are down because he's not playing hard anymore or not as engaged offensively. It might be a combination of all these things. What's striking about this is that this entire time, Jimmy Butler's issue has been with Pat Riley and that front office that refused to entertain a contract extension back in the spring and was never given that. And then he was obviously called out by Pat Riley at his end of season press conference. That relationship was severed at that moment and has not recovered since then. But this is the first time we've heard Jimmy Butler attack Eric Spoelstra.
Mm-hmm.
And that part is really interesting here. And I don't know if Jimmy Butler is actually upset or if he's just kind of casting a wide net here and just burning the whole thing to the ground. But he clearly is telling people and indicating to people, because everything that was coming out of Miami was, hey, it serves Jimmy Butler better to play hard no matter what, because he's going to want to create a trade market for himself if he indeed wants out of here. And Jimmy Butler, and this whole thing has been a game of poker where people are just raising and calling each other's bluffs. And Jimmy Butler just said, okay, you want to play it that way? Fine. I'm not going to give you the numbers. I'm not going to give you the production. And then I'm going to sit here at the podium and say, it's not because I'm not playing hard. I could still help a contender win. I am still capable of being dominant. And I'm paraphrasing here, but this is essentially what he said. And it's because of the way now I'm being used. And that's an interesting card to play. I got to be honest. I didn't see it coming. I don't know that any other front offices around the league see it that way, but it's interesting that framing it that way.
Yeah, it kind of deflects it away from him, right? Like this is a very clear tactic. I don't know if he was coached up. I don't know if it's something innate in Jimmy and his understanding. I don't know if he really feels this way. Like there might be a part of him that actually believes that he's been told his role is different and that he's forced to play differently. And yet this season we've seen him play Jimmy Butler style of basketball, where he brings the ball up, where he initiates, where he drives, he attacks, he does the things that we've come to expect from Jimmy Butler. And so for him to say that his role is different now, I can't accept that. Like I don't buy it. I don't buy that the coaching staff has told him that his role is different, that they might want him to do things slightly differently to get Tyler involved or to get Bam involved might be one thing. But I don't think that reduces his role so drastically that you could say, well, that's why I only scored 5 points tonight. Right? That's why I refuse to shoot technical free throws. That's why I didn't play defense at a high level, et cetera.
First play of the game, Jimmy Butler drives to the basket, comes off a screen, drives to the basket, scores on a layup. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Did not score another point until the third quarter. Didn't score another field goal. I'm sorry. I think he got to the line. Didn't score another field goal until the third quarter. I was at the game on Media Row, and I see right before tip-off, Jimmy Butler goes to Tyler Hero, and they're talking about something, and you can kind of see Jimmy kind of pat his chest or something. And my guess right there is saying that he was like, "Get me the ball" or something like that, or whatever. Yeah.
First, yeah.
Jimmy gets the ball and then passes it to Tyler. Tyler brings it up. Jimmy goes to the corner, and I'm like, "Oh, here we go." Jimmy's actually doing the opposite. He's like, Spo wants me to have the ball. I don't want it. You take it. I'm going to the corner. So Jimmy goes to the corner and then comes up from the corner, gets a screen set for him, grabs the ball from Tyler Hero on a handoff, and then goes around another screen, drives to the basket. Oh, he called his own number. That's cool. Like he saw something and he got the matchup that he wanted. I wonder if that's not the play that Spo called. I'm wondering if Spo said, I want Jimmy facilitating on this because the Bam tipped it to Jimmy. I want Jimmy facilitating on this. And then we're going to run this different play. And Jimmy just audibled at the last second on the court. But then why would you do that? And I know this is reckless speculation here, but I wonder if like Jimmy Butler was just like, here's what I can do. Here's a little taste, and you're not going to see it again for the rest of the night.
No, I think it's exactly it. Like that's what I'm thinking as you're painting this scenario. Like in hindsight, maybe we're kind of coming to the conclusion and kind of putting the puzzle pieces together with a picture that we're much more comfortable seeing now that this report is out and now that we've heard from him in his post-game press conference. But it kind of just sounds like this is a tactic of him saying, I'm capable of doing this whenever the hell I damn well want to. And I can do this at any point in time. You're just not letting me do this. And that's why I'm frustrated. That's why I'm upset. But again, I call BS on that because I just don't see that his role has to be any different. and that he can still dictate the terms of how he's used because we've seen him kind of take things
Did it on the,
over.
well, he did it on the first possession. If he wants to take it over, he could take it over.
And
I
I'm
think
sure Eric
he's.
Spoelstra
I'm
is
sure
perfectly
he's
fine with it.
I'm sure he is, and I'm sure he bristled at Eric Spoelstra for questioning his effort, because there's one thing that Jimmy Butler always takes pride in is his effort for whatever reason. And a lot of people have questioned his effort, people on this program included, mostly me. And I stand by that. I don't think he's always fully engaged on it every night, especially last year. But and I don't think he was putting up the effort Wednesday night or tonight in this game either, right? And so I think all of that is totally fair. I just don't think he wants that to be the narrative out there, because it does hurt his trade value. And I think that's why he's pinning some blame on Eric Spoelstra. And by the way, Eric Spoelstra has called him out, and they've almost gotten to a fight on the sidelines. I do think that they've, obviously they've brushed before, but if it's on his list of grievances, I don't think it's at the top. The top is the money. The top is the contract. The top is Pat Riley. And this stuff is just sort of adding fuel to the fire. Now, I do think Jimmy Butler, you kind of referenced this before. Was he coached up? Did he plan on this? I think he 100% planned to speak with the media tonight. I think this was very scripted. I think everything was very intentional. We'll talk about that here next, and what some of his teammates have heard from Jimmy Butler behind the scenes and what they told us after Jimmy Butler's fiery media conference. We'll talk about all of that coming up here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if it's your first $5 bet and you win. You might even be able to place a wager on Jimmy Butler's next team, because it clearly isn't going to be the Miami Heat. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown or how many points each team will score. It can be really thrilling, especially when you win. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's the only way you can win. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. If you're joining us maybe for the first time or one of your first times, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We are going to be crunching this Jimmy Butler situation. That's safe to say. There's so much to get into here. We're not going to be able to get it all into this episode. But, David, I think everybody in the media room was a little surprised that Jimmy Butler wanted to speak with us after the game. He declined to speak to the media after the Pelicans win when he didn't play in the fourth quarter. Right. And by the time we were allowed in the locker room, was gone, which is not a rare thing for Jimmy Butler, but it's a noticeable thing every time it happens. And the fact that Heat PR comes into the room and says, "You're getting Jimmy in the room tonight," and then we were told, "You might want to stay here before coming into the locker room because we think he's coming to the podium quickly." Again, not a rare thing, but just told us. So Jimmy gets to the podium very quickly, and it's about, I think it was like a 3 or 4 minute press conference, and he was prepared right away with what he wanted to say. And I think this was his intention all along. I mean, he said, first question, how did you feel about your performance and focus tonight? He says, I felt great. I felt like I was focused. I felt like I did my job, or at least what my job is now. And then from there, he continues to say, this is what my role is here. He indicated that he could do something else. He could play better somewhere else. There was just a lot of stuff that was just short of the trade demand, but indicated that he didn't want to be there. And then I asked Bam Adebayo, essentially, if Jimmy Butler had indicated to them if he wanted to be traded. And Bam just said yes. And then you get this ESPN report right after that. Tyler Hero in the locker room, poor guy, seconds after Jimmy Butler lights the press room on fire, I think it was Ira Winderman from the Sun Sentinel goes, "Hey, this is what Jimmy just said, your response," essentially. And Tyler's just like, what? Like, not even an opportunity to even digest the news. You think we're fumbling through this thing now? I mean, and it was just this awkward press conference, and he said nothing, and that's totally understandable. I don't know what I would have done in that situation either. But I think everybody was a little caught off guard by Jimmy Butler using the press conference in that way, but not surprised that Jimmy Butler felt that way, because you and I have talked about this. There has been an awkward feeling around this team for a while. And I think they specifically are feeling awkward about how they're going to try to loop Jimmy Butler back in, because you even go back to that Pelicans game and you have Bam and Tyler saying, we're just going to work him in. We'll be okay. We'll work him on. Very just sort of general answers. And then Eric Spoelstra talking about, hey, we're going to action him as our facilitator, as sort of our point guard and all these things. And that's Eric Spoelstra's plan. And he's telling us this after tonight's game. And then Jimmy walks in minutes later and says, the hell with your point guard routine. I'm not doing that, essentially. And now I don't think I could find joy playing here. So this awkward situation, I think, is untenable. And this idea of letting Jimmy Butler, this whole thing fester and work itself out in the summer, I don't really know how you do that anymore.
No, that's unrealistic. I mean, I said before, I didn't think that Pat Riley had been smart in issuing as benign a statement as it was in saying, oh, we're not going to trade him. Like, you couldn't put yourself in that situation knowing that a trade request might be coming, and here we are a week later with a trade request firmly in place. But I mean, even to the larger point of what you spoke of Bam already knowing, of Jimmy using tonight as an opportunity to speak to media, like, it's pretty clear that this is a strategy developed by Jimmy and his agent. You know, that their report was coming today is not a coincidence, something that they knew about well in advance. Clearly, Bernie Lee has spoken to Shams and Brian Windhorst and said, he's formally requested a trade. I have formally requested a trade on Jimmy's behalf, etc.
I don't know.
Why they're running the story.
I
It has to be. I mean, that's the headline of the story here.
Did they say his agent? Did they say his representation in the story?
No, that Jimmy Butler has indicated to the Miami Heat he wants the team to trade him.
It could technically come straight from. I just want to be clear that we don't know for sure that it's
okay.
It's
all right,
yeah.
I'm supposing this. I don't think that there's any way in between not having shoot around this morning, Jimmy reporting to the facility, walking his way through a 48-minute performance, and then using the press conference to burn things down. I don't think at any point did he bump into Pat Riley and said, get me the hell out of here, Pat. I don't want to be here anymore. I think it was Bernie and whatever conversations or however this works out.
Sure. But driven by Jimmy. Jimmy's the one unhappy, you know, Bernie Lee's just his agent. And I do think.
But that there was a strategy in place here to use the press conference, knowing that this report was going to come out minutes later. I think it's pretty clear. And I don't know, again, if parts of what was reported in the story, Jimmy's own comments, it seems like the final straw may have been a team official, likely Eric Spoelstra. And again, that's us supposing it, saying, well, you weren't playing hard. You didn't go out there and play hard against the Pelicans on Wednesday night. And then Jimmy bristling at that and being like, I didn't play hard. And then that was just like, you know what? This is untenable. I cannot take this situation anymore. I am going to go ahead and formally request a trade.
I go back to that Starting Five Netflix documentary. And it was one of the things I thought of when he said, he said, I want to find joy on the basketball court again, when he said that tonight. And one of the things that he said in that Netflix doc was about how much joy he talked about, how much joy he finds on the basketball court and how he can forget about everything else going on in his personal life and everything when he's, you know, between those lines and on the hardwood and all those things.
Sure.
And, you know, usually you kind of feel that with Jimmy, and we haven't been feeling that for a lot of different reasons, but if he doesn't have that joy right now, then this is all that the Heat can expect. Like he was a problem on the court tonight. Like, he had the lowest plus minus on the team. He was a minus 27 in 27 minutes. Miami was outscored a point a minute with Jimmy Butler on the court. And that is rare. It feels like Jimmy Butler has to try to be a negative on the court because he is such an overwhelming positive basically every time he's out there. And that's been the case even this year. That has mostly, you know, been the case until tonight and last night. So he doesn't play in two straight fourth quarters. That's Eric Spoelstra sending a message. Now, to be fair, Bam didn't play in the fourth quarter in this game either, and he had a good game. That was just mostly the game was over, and they just played the young guys a whole lot. But 2 straight fourth quarters that Jimmy Butler didn't play. And I do think you're right. I think that might have been the final straw. It was like, hey, I had it up to here with Pat Riley. I had it up to here with these contract negotiations that aren't happening. I had it up to here with where my next contract is going to come from. But the day-to-day stuff, that's player coach. Like, players don't talk to the general manager and certainly not the team president very often, if ever, over the course of a season, right? Maybe a little bump here or there. But you're dealing with your coach every single day, multiple times, and obviously in the game all the time. And if that relationship has soured, then I understand why Jimmy Butler can't even find joy when in that place that he was able to find joy with all the contract, all that stuff going on. If he can actually go out there and play well, because again, he was playing well for most of this season, and now that is shot because now his relationship with the coach is fried. And that's the part now that feels like the most untenable part of this.
Right. To your overall question, if the Heat can keep this going, no, they can't. Like this has gone beyond just a distraction. These aren't the rumors that Pat Riley was referring to when he issued his statement last week. This isn't, it's just a report from ESPN that you can, shoot down or dispel or try to disbelieve or whatever. Question. Exactly. This is well beyond that. This is a formal issuing of a statement that he wants to be traded. And that being the case, and look, it's clear from Bam's response, from Tyler's response, and now from Jimmy himself, like that he's joyless out there and does not want to be here. Well, you cannot just keep this guy on the roster. This is not a franchise that deals with this. Like you could look to the souring of the relationship with LeBron James, Chris Bosh, Dwayne Wade. All of those happened during the offseason by and large. Like maybe there was some bristling here with LeBron in his last season of understanding that there was going to be that Dwayne wasn't going to be able to play at the same high level and that maybe he was being courted by the Cleveland Cavaliers. Fine. But he didn't make his decision to leave here until the season was over after they lost in the finals to the San Antonio Spurs. This is different. This is happening during the season. You can't keep him here. You can't keep him here anymore because it's just not just a distraction. It's a disservice to the rest of the players on this roster, regardless of whether you think they can win a playoff series or whether you think you're just going to be leaning in towards the future. Whatever your goals are for the season, they're changing on the fly, but you don't want to do something that's going to hinder their progress and sour the way this franchise is largely viewed around the league. You have to make a move immediately. And now there's one.
I'm sorry, though, for a team that prides itself on culture.
Yes.
This has the potential to eat at that culture. Oh, yeah. And it's not fair to the players.
No, it's not.
And it's not Eric Spoelstra's fault necessarily. I don't think that the front office is blameless in this. I think they grossly misplayed their hand, Pat Riley specifically. Calling Jimmy Butler out the way that he did wasn't smart. You could feel that way. We appreciate the candor. Like, I'm never going to tell anybody not be candid. I appreciate honesty, but it wasn't smart. And it led to this. It led maybe there was other ways to handle the contract negotiation if Jimmy Butler felt like Pat Riley was in his corner, but it was clear that Pat Riley wasn't going to negotiate and that he wasn't in his corner. So I understand why Jimmy Butler doesn't trust him and why that relationship has been severed, and it has been severed. And so I think everybody is at fault here a little bit in terms of front office and player. Yes. But now, and I think the front office was wrong not to trade Jimmy Butler in the summer, right? And it was because this was sort of the only way that this was going to play out, and that's what happened here. And they should, and they didn't necessarily have to trade him, but they just refused to even entertain the trades. And that was the part where this team is so like gung-ho about never taking that step back, where sometimes I feel like they can't see the forest through the trees, where it's just like, this doesn't work and you need to change something. And now they're kind of being forced to negotiate out of a position of weakness. And so let's put a pin in this here, because we got so much more to get to here. We'll talk about Jimmy Butler's trade value, what comes next for the Heat if they do trade him, what these trades could look like. We're going to talk about all that next year on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is also brought to you by Game Time. I love going to live events. Who doesn't? Whether it's sports or music, theater, comedy shows. One of my favorite memories this past summer was attending a concert. The energy and excitement were unforgettable, and getting the tickets through Game Time made the process even easier than ever before. It's great to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. It filters out all the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. It's so convenient, and you can do it in just a matter of minutes. You find amazing deals there, and you can even see the view from the seat that you're going to be buying before you actually buy it. The Super Deal is a particularly impressive feature. It offers great seats at unbeatable prices. Plus, the app's all-in pricing shows the total cost right up front. No surprise fees at checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA. You get $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. If you like the video, hit that like button on YouTube. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you follow us on your favorite podcast app. Support us on all those ways. You can find us on social media, Instagram, Locked On Heat, Twitter, Locked On Heat on all the things.
Can I brush back a little bit on the alleged,
Please.
well, your statement
That they should have
traded him over the
trades
summer?
Well, they explored it. Yeah.
I know that they explored it. I thought he was going to play the season out, and I didn't think it was going to go this south this quickly. Like it did. I mean, maybe I was naive in thinking that. I know that there were going to be some discussions between his agent and the front office and maybe explore those deals at some point, but I guess it just became a situation that Jimmy didn't want to take that risk any further, even though he's still set to make $52 million next year. He could do absolutely nothing. He could get hurt this year, and he could still collect as much money as he's making this season and another $52 million.
Well, that would be the worst case scenario, wouldn't it? Like, he doesn't
for
have
whom?
To, for Miami. For Jimmy, I don't think.
Yes, which is surprising, exactly. But we're kind of seeing this from Jimmy's perspective now, the way that he's using this season and tonight in particular as an opportunity to kind of burn things out and get his way. But it's not like he's in a bad place. He's in a place where he can, again, lead this team, be the player that he's always been with the Miami Heat, perhaps carry them to a playoff run, and still collect $52 million.
Well, he thinks he's in a bad place.
No. Yeah, I get it. I get it. I'm feeling like I'm being a little unfair because it just feels
no,
like
you're not. No,
now,
David, you're not. I'm saying you're not. But it's almost like it's almost pointless. Like, he feels like he's in a bad place, and he's made it clear. Like, he doesn't have joy. He does not want to be here anymore. He's made it as clear as he possibly can. And so we're at this point now where I do think I don't think, even despite all of this, if you're Miami, you can't think, well, we'll just deal with this in the summer because he's going to opt out and we can walk away from this. He can make this worse. He can make this worse. He can opt in to $52 million next year and then force a trade that way.
I was telling somebody earlier today, I was like, at this point in time, if the Pat Riley hasn't told him or Bernie, stay the hell away from the team. Like, I think in the report from ESPN, it says that he's going to continue to participate in Heat activities.
Yeah.
Screw that. I don't want him anywhere near the team. I would not want him. I don't think there's any benefit in having him and his presence there. Like, it's not going to benefit anybody at this point. You don't want to risk an injury and lower whatever trade value he already has, which we're going to explore later on in the show. You don't want him and his sour attitude. He's not happy being here. Don't be here, buddy. Stay home. You're happy off the court. Spend plenty of time off the court because you ain't coming back here. Like, they shouldn't have brought him back. Like, when I said last week that I thought he was done and that he would never play in a Heat uniform, clearly that should have been the case.
Is he going to get he's going to get fined for this? This is essentially a trade request, right? And so now when you make that public trade request, you have to you typically incur a fine. We
haven't heard that from Jimmy, though.
No,
we haven't heard from Jimmy.
Fair. No, that's fair. Have we heard it directly from players who got fined? I guess that's not important. They could even just use this press conference as conduct detrimental to the team potentially. But then you kind of get into the legislation with the players union. I don't know that they're going to want to do that.
Team could use this
in order to suspend him, because you can't just tell a player to stay away from the team. Like, the Players Association will step in. You have to suspend him.
No, you don't. PJ Tucker was told to stay away from the Clippers.
No, but that was mutual.
I'm pretty sure this is mutual at this point.
But Jimmy just said, I'm going to do the Heat activities. So
the report said that. The report said that. And he can dispute that. And he could be like, you know what? Following my press conference, if Bernie wants to come out publicly and issue a statement.
Well, okay. My point being is that the avenue is either you have to suspend Jimmy for conduct detrimental to the team, or you have to keep him around. And if you do suspend him for conduct, then you're going to enter some sort of situation with the Players Association. And then that plays out. And I don't know that the Heat want to do that. So then it might just be, so that might be how Jimmy Butler sort of forces their hand here, is making it awkward as possible.
Do not.
You don't have to play him. Keep him around. He sits on the bench. Totally fair.
I wouldn't even do that, because then somebody's going to, I know he's not going to be approached in the locker room at this point, and he's certainly not going to be available to the press conference.
He won't be available.
The Heat PR will be like, nah, we don't.
And he'll just hide in that, and he'll go to that back room in the back of the locker room, the other locker room that Heat actually use, and they don't. They're not around the reporters.
But I wouldn't even have him out there. Like, I think it's going to be more of a distraction to have him at that point. And I think I think
The
he
most
could
I think
accept that.
the most I think that you could do without incurring any sort of violations as a team is you list him as available, you don't start him, and you don't play him. But then that's like, is that worse? I don't know. Like, I honestly don't know.
If he refutes that, if he can go to be like, I'm healthy, and then he can make a big stink about it. But again, I don't think this is like the last 2 games haven't helped his trade value. His
So let's
press
talk
conference
about that.
hasn't helped his trade value.
What is his trade value now?
Piss poor. Pretty low. Like if there's one line that you could take some solace from as a Heat fan, it's that he's open to playing anywhere other than Miami. Like that is a hell of a blanket statement to throw in there. It's like, you know what? I hate it here. I don't want to be here for another second longer. And I would be willing to play anywhere. At first, it was title contenders. Now it's sent me to the goddamn Washington Wizards for Kyle Kuzma and draft picks. Like, I don't care. I will go anywhere other than here.
And he
Because
says he thinks he
believes,
can
and this
make
is
any team a
yes,
contender now. It's
which
whatever.
good luck
That's
to you, buddy. I mean,
uh,
he didn't make this team a contender, so I don't know. I mean,
no,
twice,
not
sure,
not these last 2 years, certainly not. And
not on his own.
I the thing that is, again, what the Heat kept expressing was it's better for Jimmy Butler to play it out so that he can increase his trade value and increase the trade market. And Jimmy Butler is saying, okay, bet. I'm going to make my trade value so low. You're almost, and this situation so untenable that you're forced to trade me. And I don't give a bleep what you get back for me. In fact, I hope you get nothing for me. I hope you get a second round pick and an expiring salary and you go kick rocks. And then I'm going to go win somewhere else is probably what Jimmy Butler's mindset could be right now. That said, I do think there will be teams. There's always a team. He's still too good when he's engaged. There's going to be some team, and I don't know who it is, but there's going to be some team that talks himself into Jimmy Butler. And I don't know what that looks like. And I don't know what, like, you and I, before we even started recording, we're like, I don't know, like the names that are usually out there: Phoenix, Golden State, Houston. I don't think Houston is interested in this. Jimmy doesn't fit the timeline. They're not in a rush to do this. I don't think they're that desperate. I think they might have their sights turned to other places at this point. Phoenix is just, I think they were really interested in getting Jimmy Butler, but it's just so many hoops to jump through. They'd have to find a different team to take Bradley Beal. The Heat will not be so desperate to take on Bradley Beal. Like, that's not happening. I really would be, I would be shocked if they did that. Golden State, it feels like their interest has waned a little bit here. And for a team as kumbaya and happy and joyful as Golden State is, I bet watching this press conference are like, are we sure we want to get in on this business? I don't know that we do. We have Draymond. Kuminga's playing better. I don't know that we want this business. I don't know. Like,
we were talking about this, like even in the Eastern Conference, like you could look at any other team in the East. The Celtics don't need him. The Cavaliers don't need him, etc. You look at any of the other mid-tier teams alongside with Miami, Orlando, Milwaukee. They don't seem like viable options.
Indiana, they just lost to. And I don't think he want to trade Jimmy to any of those teams. Like, they don't want to see Jimmy multiple times a year. They want to see him twice, one at home, one on the road. I think if the Heat could do it, they'd trade him to the Western Conference.
Would Charlotte do it?
I don't think so. He doesn't really match anything that they want to be doing.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah,
I don't. I mean, you look around the league, and this is not as easy or as much of a slam dunk as you might think it could be. Like, I know you know this, but I'm saying for a lot of people think you can just trade him for a bag of chips. It's not likely to happen. The teams that want him, Phoenix, Houston, etc., they can't trade for him. Like, not realistic.
Houston can, but we don't know that they want him. But Phoenix, Phoenix wants him, and they're going to have to find a third team to take Beal and have that third team send stuff to Miami. And again, it's same thing with it. All right, what's the team that wants Bradley Beal with 2 years left on this contract and a no trade clause? Like, it's hard, like those teams could just trade for Zach LaVine, who's already overpaid, but doesn't come with a no trade clause and is better right now than Bradley Beal. So, the topic has been broached this week. The New Orleans Pelicans, like Zion Williamson, would they trade Zion for Jimmy Butler? Like, even that feels like something that I think Heat fans think, yeah, do that. And I'm like, I don't know that New Orleans would do that. Like, what is Jimmy Butler doing for that roster?
Big Face Coffee, make anything with chicory in it? I mean,
they could, put that with a beignet. That sounds pretty good. That sounds pretty good. One team I keep going back.
Options out there.
The one team I keep going back to is Memphis, who feels like they're a move away from being, hey, this team can make the Western Conference Finals, to this team might be like co-favorites with Oklahoma City to make the finals. Like Memphis has looked that good at times this year. And when they're healthy, I think they're as good as anybody outside of Oklahoma City in the Western Conference. Is that one piece away Jimmy Butler? I mean, he plays the only position of real need for them at the wing, kind of fits that grinded out mentality. Could be another option as a scorer, somewhere between obviously the top scorer and John Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr., who at times could be a great scorer, but is probably better cast as a third option. I don't know. The Denver stuff has been out there.
Marcus Smart, John Conchar, and what, a couple picks?
You could do Devin Bane and Brandon Clark. But that might be an overpay at this point from Memphis. Like that could have been available in the summer. I don't know that that's available now. So yeah, maybe it's Marcus Smart, Brandon Clark, John Conchar, and that might be it. I don't know that they're getting a pick out of that. Maybe a second round. I don't know.
They better. They have to at least get some picks, like
some sort of protected
2-3
first.
second round picks, maybe.
Yeah,
protected first. Something. I mean, they
protected first in this. Yeah, you could get that. What do they offered a top 17 protected for Dorian Finney-Smith? Maybe you get that one. Denver, Michael Porter Jr. I don't know. I kind of like the fit there. I kind of hate it. Doesn't really work. So to your point, it's hard. It's hard to find the deal. So Jimmy Butler's trade value is not very high right now because he's 35 on an expiring contract, and it was never that high even before this media session that he just had.
Yeah.
And the Heat found that out because they explored the trade market for him and found out that they didn't like what was out there. And I don't know that anything that just happened helped. But now whatever loose offers were out there, either the Heat might have to accept them, or those teams now can come back and be like, oh, that offer's not on the table anymore, buddy. Because Miami's negotiating from a position of weakness.
Yeah.
And now they are. And that's the tough part with where this team is. So
they have to accept the lesser offer just to move on from Jimmy, or can they just keep him away from the team and hope that whatever, they'll figure something out in the summer?
I think if you're guaranteed cap relief, you have to have an hour-long meeting about it. In other words, if what you're getting back is expiring contracts and you know that you're not on the hook for potentially $52 million next year, that I don't think Jimmy Butler would ever play out the season next year. I think he could do a James Harden thing where he opts in and then makes it even worse than it is now and forces his way out of there, something for rocks, for just basically 3 Nick Batums and second-round picks. I think if you can guarantee yourself the cap relief this summer, I think you almost have to do it. I don't know that you're getting draft picks back. Maybe something loose, maybe something heavily protected. And maybe some of those players turn into helpful players for you going forward, but you need to create some flexibility. I think that would be the priority, because you're not getting a young, I don't think you're getting Kuminga back at this point. Like that stuff that we were debating before, I don't even know if that's on the table anymore.
This is setting up to put Miami's front office in a very difficult place for a long time now. Like I'm thinking about this even as we're talking about this. And one, again, a lot of the conversation of late has been, well, Pat Riley failed to build a team around Jimmy Butler, so it doesn't look good. Then you're also saying, well, Pat kind of screwed the pooch and mishandled the situation and overplayed his card this year in the offseason comments. Then he's handled this situation badly by saying we won't trade him, and now kind of being forced to trade him, and now having to take a lesser package, all while alienating your franchise player for the last 5.5 seasons. There's 2 paths here that I'm seeing, even as we're talking about this, is that things go badly and then things get worse, where again, you wind up trading him for peanuts, pennies on the dollar, and then you're kind of stuck with nothing and you have nothing to show for it. And then you're kind of stuck in the wheel of mediocrity for the next couple seasons. Or, and this is what we've come to expect from this front office, but they just might not be able to pull it off anymore, is that now you've got a little bit more space and you can help usher in the next era of Heat basketball. And this offseason is a pivotal one for this franchise in having to secure that next superstar, or at least that player with the potential to become that next superstar, because you have to do something. You can't just let Jimmy and this contract situation walk away and get nothing for it and then wind up not being able to build this team shortly thereafter. This isn't 2008. This isn't 2008. You can't just waste 2 years of Dwayne Wade's prime in
No.
the hope that you can build the big 3 in 2010. And yeah, sure, that worked out. You got 2 championships for it. Whatever, that was great. That's also 14 years ago, and you can't look that far back in the rear mirror in the NBA. That's just not how things work. So you have to be able to use this opportunity to restart your team. And if you can't, then this might be the beginning of the end for this front office.
I won't go that far, just because if you're the Heat and you were already prepared to let him walk for nothing, then if you just trade him for expiring contracts, that's essentially the same thing that you kind of were hoping was going to happen.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you're going to open up. And Bobby Marks over at ESPN had tweeted this. I'm just going to pull it up right here. He said, if Jimmy Butler's contract essentially expires after the season, which is still a possibility because he's on the roster, or if you trade him for a bunch of expiring contracts, and it amounts to basically the same thing, Miami would be $47 million below the tax and have access to the $14 million non-tax mid-level exception, a $5.1 million biannual exception, $50 million in expiring contracts to play with, and the ability to take back more salary in a trade. They become imminently more flexible. And I that to me is worth something. And if you can use these mid-level exceptions and some of the cap space, which I think if I had it right, it's like $14 or $15 million in cap space, just raw cap space. Like, there's some players out there. You kind of pick 2 or 3 role players you add to this roster. You've got Bam, you've got Tyler Hero playing at an all-star level. Jaime and Kalel and Jovic are only getting better. We like what we've seen from them lately. You add a couple of good role players to that mix on nice chunky salaries, and all of a sudden, and you start to accumulate your own draft picks back year over year. It's not, we're not talking about a Houston Rockets or an Oklahoma City Thunder or Orlando Magic type of youth movement here,
Right.
but it is something. And I don't think it's a bit of a reset, but you still have 2 kind of all-stars with Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo on the roster. It is what they've been over the last 2 years. It's a play-in team.
No doubt.
And so, but a play-in team with upside, where right now it just feels like it's a play-in team with a dark cloud hovering over it. And so I think that's basically where we're at. We have so much more we can get into with this, David. We're only getting started in something that feels like we've been talking about forever, but it feels
like
like
to do another bonus episode on Friday, and who knows if news breaks over the weekend. Yeah, we might have to do something then as well.
Let us know in the comments. Send us your trade ideas. Maybe we do a whole episode where we just break down fan submitted trade ideas. That could be fun. Let us know what you think got us here to Jim Fun. Yeah, we're having fun. We gotta have, or whatever. I don't know. I'm kind
of bummed out. I'm gonna throw this in at the end, and if you're still with us at 48 or whatever 43 minutes here, like, this sucks. Like, I mean, Jimmy was great to watch. I mean, I've got a picture of Jimmy Butler behind me here, and I'm not supposed to, as media, you're not really supposed to do any of this, but I mean, covering that team by myself the first year that Jimmy was on the roster, and being through the pandemic and watching that team in the bubble and watching him play at the level he did, like, that was inspirational stuff. That was enough to kind of make me fall back in love with basketball to a certain extent when it was a really dark time in this country. And I think a lot of people could speak to that. And so I really took a lot of joy of watching the Jimmy Butler era. And I'm disappointed that it has played out the way it has. Like, it should never have come to this point. And I don't know if it could have been salvaged. I don't know if a simple conversation might have fixed things rather than publicly blasting him. I don't know if they mishandled the situation with his father's passing, or whether or not maybe he's just upset they didn't acquire Dame Lillard, or they didn't throw in enough to get Kevin Durant. Who knows? So many different things that we'll probably never hear the full story about. And it's just also unfortunate because Jimmy helped define his team. Like, there are eras of this team, from the Alonzo Mourning and Tim Hardaway era, the pre-Pat Riley era, the Shaq era, the Dwayne era, the Big Three era, and there was the Jimmy Butler era, and that is at an end now. And there's going to be a time of grief, and it's mourning, because you have to kind of just acknowledge this team just wasn't able to accomplish a lot. They were able to accomplish a lot, but they weren't able to reach their final goal of a championship. And that's kind of a bummer that things are playing out this badly and this publicly in a way that I didn't think it was ever going to happen. I thought they were going to come to a resolution. I thought they were going to offer him a nicer deal, but one that was going to be lower than the kind of amount of money he was expecting to get. And I thought he was going to retire, as he said, the way he wanted to retire, wearing a Heat jersey And that's clearly not going to be the case.
To quote the movie Cocktail, everything ends badly. Otherwise it wouldn't end.
Damn. Thank you, Tom Cruise.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app.